Oh, well, hello, my wonderful, beautiful brothers of the wonderful, beautiful Maverick Nation. Now, for the second thing that I was going to be doing, little special thing. Have you ever wondered what would it be like if your universe crash coursed into someone else's universe? As in canon versus what if? You know, everything. All of a sudden, a what if thing comes into the canon universe. And what I mean by that being a little thing that I am deciding to call What If Izuku was Shadow? Or, as I would rather like to call it, The Return of What If Izuku was Shadow. Episode 1. The Adventure. Or Adventures. Whichever one you would like to say is more canon to you. Adventure or Adventures. Basically, the return of What If Izuku was Shadow. Episode 1, The Adventure. Or Adventures, whichever I decide. It's basically how our first episode of our little return to an old little two-parter thing that I decided to, put out there for all of the YouTube viewers to see. I actually give a shit about my content. In this first episode of our little thing being called The Adventures. Or more or less actually The Adventure. I decided to call it The Adventure 2. I decided to call it The Adventure 2. Since technically Shadow isn't introduced till Adventure 2. Yes, The Adventure 2. What if Izuku was Shadow? Like, the return of What if Izuku was Shadow? Episode 2. The Adventure 2. Oh, shit. Damn straight, oh shit. So basically, how this little thing is going to start off is that basically there are going to be some scientists. Let's just say that one of the scientists, he says he found something unbelievable. It seems to have taken on the appearance of a child living in the near area. However, they don't exactly have exact information on the name and everything of the child. However, they are indeed, scrambling around for information of the child to see if any of that information matches the information of all of the vital scans of this life form. It seems to have a similar look to the child. And, well, soon enough, this will be the canon time whenever This was actually be before canon. They would still be in middle school, but they would go on a field trip. They would go on a field trip to a place that apparently studies a lot of different scientific old stuff. Stuff that has to do with science and stuff. And Izuku would kind of get lost within the maze of so many different exciting new undiscovered things. And Bakugo wouldn't really care that he lost the person who was supposed to be his partner, apparently. And well, Bakugo would find it just a minor annoyance. That is until the ground began to shake as the thing in the capsule, it would begin to start to open its eyes. And what it would be looking at, that would be on the outside of the capsule, would be the very curious Izuku Midoriya. The thing inside of the capsule would be looking at Izuku. And there would be so many different things, different thoughts racing through this being's head. That the rage, the limits of rage that the machine could take would be blown to pieces. So all of a sudden, put these things back on. I got real close to dying one time. I don't want that to happen again. What? You were the one. Keeps on pissing me off. Why do you look like me? This strange creature would then begin to dash towards Izuku, and fast before any pro hero on the scene could get to him, would soon dash straight into him, grab onto his neck, deep into his throat, and begin yelling at him questions he didn't really seem to know the answer to. Why? Why do you look so much like me? You faker! And then Izuku would begin to get agged on himself, calling this thing a faker. You faker, you're the faker around here. Then Izuku would rally up a couple punches, but then all of a sudden, the other thing, the thing that looked like him, would just pop all around, and then Izuku would feel like his movements were becoming slower. But then the thing would correct him, saying that this is chaos control. I can control the flow of time, and even to some extent, space. You're not getting any slower. It's just the very field energy around you that allows you to move is becoming slowed. Your own movements aren't slowing down. The very space around you that allows the molecules that make up your body is becoming slower. So you could perceive it as you're becoming slower, when really, the very thing that allows you to exist is the thing that's slowing down. And to assure you that I'm not telling a lie, as this thing, this look-alike of him, would then strike him in the back, as his speed would then return to him right as he was about to fall on his face. And then all of a sudden, someone would grab him, who would be his favorite hero in all the world. Then, this look-alike of Izuku would begin to see things. See another All Might supporting this other him. This fake. It's the only thing he could explain it as. A fake. A copy. Could never even come close to his power. After all, he was indeed the ultimate life form. So, there's nothing that could reach his power. Especially if he was actually trying. All of that he showed that boy, that copy, he wasn't even paying attention the majority of the time. More or less, just watching to see what others would try to do in order to save him. They were more struck with awe on how powerful he was than actually paying attention to save this faker. And that's whenever Izuku Midoriya's shadow would finally say, "You, why are you saving that faker? He doesn't deserve." If he's such a faker, then he doesn't deserve to exist. So get the hell out of my way before I blow you up too. And that's whenever All Might would state, "If you wish to harm this poor innocent child, then that makes you a villain. And if you're a villain, I must stop you." And then some spiral energy would form around All Might's hand as he would ready up a Plus Ultra. Seeing just how truly dangerous this other Izuku was. Or at least he thought he was seeing how truly dangerous he was. No, Izuku Midoriya's shadow, the shadow from another, well, wherever he was. This version of Izuku was beyond any of their comprehension just how powerful he was. That is, unless he let them be able to comprehend it. His power, his true extent of his own existence, his reason for existing. But no, they didn't deserve to know, because they were all trying to protect that faker. And that's whenever, finally, having enough, just as that powerful attack, the one the man called Plus Ultra, Shadow would summon within his hand power, Chaos Spear, until he heard ringing on his phone. And that's whenever All Might would slowly begin to kind of become demoralized by certain factoids. Apparently, whoever this was, they had a mother whose name was the same as Izuku's mother. And Izuku, whenever finally realizing all of this, as he legit mentioned her name with actual legitimacy that Izuku was hearing coming through their voice. While they still seemed very agitated, they were still very legit in the way they said things, the way they said everything, the way they carried themselves each and every time they went to attack. Izuku was now beginning to realize something, and so he would go over to tell All Might. He would start to poke at All Might's shoulder, and All Might would stare over at Izuku. Izuku saying, "This guy, there must be some sort of alternate universe stuff going on. He's his own universe as Izuku, and I'm the Izuku of this universe. And seeing as the whole mistake and everything, his train of thought has become lopsided." And that's whenever the other Izuku would finally begin to end his conversation with his mother, whose name was also, indeed, Inko Midoriya. And then, well, the fight would begin to resume. That is, until Izuku was just plainly state that he figured it out now. It's just, he's a different shadow. Actually, he's a different Izuku. Sorry about that. He's a different Izuku from, well, him. They're from two different, either universes, multiverses, whatever. They're just from two different worlds. Izuku's the Izuku of his world, and that guy is the Izuku of his world. It just so happens that they cross paths in a very weird way. And soon, the other Izuku would just cross his arms and look at Canon Izuku with a disapproving scowl. Well, if that's true, then how the hell am I supposed to get back to my universe? Did you ever think of that? No, you never did, because you're stupid. All of you are stupid. That's whenever All Might begin to become really pissed and actually start to charge at Shadow, like Izuku Midoriya's Shadow. And that's whenever Izuku Midoriya's Shadow would begin to do something weird, and then all of a sudden disappear. Just disappear out of nowhere. And All Might would become very confused, right just as BAM! He would get hit so hard that whenever he finally hit the ground, there would be a sweep kick, and he would get launched even further, cracking some glass. And All Might would barely be able to get up, stating that wherever he's from, the Izuku there must not be a very good person. And that's whenever Izuku Midoriya's Shadow would state, "No, the Izuku from my universe, being me, just doesn't take shit from bullshitters. You want to start something? Well then, I'll be free to stop whatever you start. personally. And that's whenever All Might would just be like, so you consider yourself to be judge, jury, and executioner of anyone you come across starting a fight. And that's whenever Izuku Midoriya's shadow would be all like, what, do you have a problem with that? Do you have a problem with me being the ultimate life form? And doing what the ultimate life form should do for the hero society of that ultimate life form's world? And Izuku would realize that this Izuku Midoriya shadow person is mentioning this ultimate life form thing a lot. And then Izuku would just, ask, what does this whole ultimate life form thing actually mean? Like, to anybody or anything. Like, what is the big deal with the whole ultimate life form thing? And that's whenever, basically, Izuku Midoriya's shadow would give everyone that was there, still conscious, the lowdown on his own existence. And that he can become even stronger than he was before, reaching lengths to where you'd probably only be able to perceive it if he allowed you to perceive it. This form, this power, he calls super, shadow, as he would mention that whenever it came to hero names, seeing as Shadow was the name of his father, someone that he really would have liked to meet in more ways than one. 4 more ways than one is what I actually meant to say. That he basically made his hero name Shadow. So, basically he would say the thing that he'd be able to turn into would be something he calls Super Shadow. Seeing as he's already considered himself the ultimate life form hero, Shadow. That's literally what he calls himself, the ultimate life form hero, Shadow. And that would make the whole transformation Super Shadow. He would basically turn from the ultimate hero, the ultimate life form hero, Shadow, into the ultimate life form hero, Super Shadow. And he really does not care about the whole name thing and what anyone thinks about it. If they want to start some shit, he will end the shit that they started. That's basically the rules that Shadow made for himself as, the only real top hero that Japan has in his universe, considering what happened with All Might in his universe. Basically, All Might would just be like, so, that's what everything's like in your universe. I'll keep my opinions to myself, seeing as I'd rather not cause more of a commotion than I already have. Getting you all nettled in that. And, Izuku would just be like, Canon Izuku would just be like, geez, why does everybody always have to be, like, agitated at each other? Like, well, legit, you could have just, been here and not caused a commotion, and not caused a commotion with the number 1 hero. Why'd you have to do that? And that's whenever, Izuku Midoriya's shadow would just be like, Some people just have to learn the hard way, don't they? Listen, even being the literal top, you know, force of justice for all of Japan, doesn't mean I'm gonna be a softie for the good guys. If someone gets on my nerves and wants to start a little bit of a shit fit, I'm gonna be the one who ends the shit fit. Nothing else to it. That's who I am. That's how I am. If you don't like it, well, I got something for you. A little thing called I don't care. And that's whenever Izuku would just be like, man, you're just really a piece of work, you know that? And, the rest of everything would go as it did in canon. Izuku's still getting bullied. And, the end of middle school would still go as in canon. The only difference really being that Izuku Midoriya's shadow being the drifter that he is. He would just show up from time to time in the canon world, doing whatever he feels is needed to be done. And that's whenever one day, after everything with the sludge villain, and, basically the whole thing with the sludge villain happening twice, and Izuku accepting All Might's quirk, one for all, and the entrance exam, getting into UA, getting into Class 1A, and everything with that, all the way, basically, it would go, as it would go in canon, all the way up until the overhaul arc. Yes, everything would go up in canon all the way up until the overhaul arc. He'd be gone for that long. Well, he wouldn't really be gone, but he'd make appearances every now and again, but it would never really be anything to interrupt the canon storyline. So, yeah. All the way up until the overhaul arc is whenever he's going to make his big story appearance again. Because he would have heard about the whole quirk restoring bullets, and the quirk destroying bullets, and how, a certain quirk from a certain person is what's used to make them, to manufacture those bullets. He would already know all of this because of his own universe, and he'd be like, so, this universe even has their own Chisaki and their own Eri, along with having their own Jiro. What I'd give to have that life back. However, I still don't know how to get back there. What I'd give to be able to have that life back. Just gotta think the right way. What would Eri want me to do? Basically, well, what would Eri and Jiro want me to do? All the way back home. What would they want me to do with the time I have here? Something tells me I'm gonna have to re-enter the life of that faker again. Uh, well, it does indeed seem that they're having a little bit of a tricky time with damage control around this shithole place. That's no problem. Now it's time. Let's do this. And as Izuku would go out to basically, do what he do, go looking after, just go looking for Chisaki to settle everything, and everybody get airy. Izuku would be looking for Chisaki, and that's whenever Izuku Midoriya's shadow would make his appearance. Right as Izuku is about to throw some hands with Chisaki, another Izuku would appear, and he would just be like, Chaos Control! And just like both of them JoJo Bizarre Adventure shit. And he'd just be like, now, let's end this. And just be like, BAM! Just Chaos Control smack Chisaki straight through his own little throne and into a wall. And Chisaki would be like, what the hell? And the regular, like, canon Izuku would just be like, what the hell? Just, and how and why and what? And Izuku Midoriya's shadow would just be like, something about a girl, Eri. Maybe we should be doing something about that. And Izuku would be like, oh, yeah, that's right. But wait, you have something in your hand other than that gem that you just keep on seeming to use whenever you say chaos control. What's that other thing? And Izuku Midoriya's shadow would be like, oh yes, this. I came to give it to you after I kicked that Chisaki guy's ass. This. Here. And, Izuku would realize it's actually technically two things. And, Izuku Midoriya's shadow would say, the first thing gives you the ability, the second thing gives you the ability to control the original ability a lot better and a lot safer. With a lot more effect. Oomph to the whole thing. It's originally called the Light Speed Dash ability. And Izuku's like, Light Speed Dash? Well, maybe if I think I got it. And then all of a sudden, if Sonic could pull off Chaos Control after seeing it once from Shadow, in order to save his life, I think Izuku would be able to pull off the frickin' Light Speed Dash. And he would. He'd actually be able to speed over there where Eri is and, actually go to get her. But then Eri would point towards someone coming from behind him and be like, aren't you two family? And, all of a sudden, Ken and Izuku would see Izuku Midoriya's shadow, and he'd be like, not really. He's a faker or not. And then Ken and Izuku would be like, oh my god, are you still on about that? I thought I clearly made it clear to you that we are from different universes. You're stuck here. So, and, Izuku Midoriya's shadow would just be like, yeah, I'm stuck here, so I'm going to do whatever I want in order to keep myself amused. And that includes still calling you Faker. Because I can. And want to. For some odd reason. It gives me a good feeling. And honestly, before you even voice anything about your own feelings, do you really think I actually would care? And, Ken and Izuku would just be like, wow, he's a savage. And wait, is he taking Eri? And then Ken and Izuku would just hear, damn straight I am. And Eri would just like, yay, yay, piggyback ride. And that's whenever Izuku Midoriya's shadow would look over to Eri and say, hey, Eri, do you like jewels? And Eri would be like, oh, you mean the shiny? And, well, Izuku Midoriya's shadow would be like, yeah, the shiny, like this. But this one specifically is called the Chaos Emerald. They're really dangerous gems. Or jewels. I'm talking more or less like collector's item type gems and jewels. The shiny stuff that you could really make a profit out of if you wanted to. And Izuku's like, are you trying to teach her how to be a thief? And, it would just be like, Izuku Midoriya's shadow would just be like, don't care. Don't want to know your opinion. I really, honestly don't care what it is. So, yeah, whatever. And Ken and Izuku would race over there, and all of a sudden, they would have disappeared, and they would just be somewhere. And, Izuku Midoriya's shadow would be talking to Eri all about jewels and gems and all of the shiny stuff. And just how much it's worth. Just, the good shit. As, you know, as Izuku Midoriya's shadow would say it to be. The good shit. That's what he would call it, like the good shit. And, well, Eri would just be like, jewels, gems, worth a lot of, you said, money. And the green money. Especially the green money. And, Izuku Midoriya's shadow would be like, especially the green money. Green paper, if you know what I mean. The big fat stacks. A lot of big fat stacks. Worth, especially if you find the really rare, the really rare ones that can only be found in certain special places. Only if you know where exactly to look will you'd be actually able to find the real good shit. And Eri would just be like, uh, uh, Shadow? And it would just be like, yeah, it's fine if you call me by my hero name, I really don't care. Eri, it's perfectly fine. I just don't like that faker saying anything. I just don't want to be around that faker at all. He's such a loser. I only gave him the Lightspeed Dash and the whole Lightspeed bracelet to help him, so I could show him up. Like, even with all the help I could give him, I'd still be able to show him up. And Eri would just be like, why? Why though? And Izuku Midoriya Shadow would be like, because notice the real light? Have you ever noticed the similarities in between the two of us? Me and that faker? And Eri would be like, oh yeah, I realize. And Izuku Midoriya Shadow would just be like, that's exactly why. He notices I'm the toughest one around and wants to copy me. How desperate can you get? Well, as for everything, it's bye-bye for now, Aerie. Whatever the law enforcement decide to do with you, it's none of my business, especially since they're not my law enforcement business. No, I have totally different business than dealing with law enforcement. Sorry, Aerie, but it's the truth. So whatever happens after this, it's all because of the boys in blue. And, over some good amount of time, Izuku would basically just be like, well, at least he's gone into hiding again, that faker. And you would be like, it actually sounds a lot more badass whenever he says it. And Uraka would be like, actually, I think he's a big meanie because of how much he hurts Izuku's feelings. And he was like, well, yeah, I know that's not a very good thing to do, but still, I mean, come on. You gotta realize he's pretty badass. And, well, Izuku would be like, yeah, I didn't need your help anyways, guys. Didn't need anyone's help anyways. Wait, what's this? Something about some sort of meta liberation army? And them using some leftover plans from the Yakuza to make some sort of giant doom weapon? And then word would spread about some couple other things, 3 things in particular, after the whole thing about the doom weapon, a jewel thief, you know, and possible current whereabouts of the Izuku Midoriya lookalike, and even something to do with possible base of someone who, just like the lookalike, isn't from this dimension. And Izuku would be like, oh great, so there's more people. Oh god, who was he gonna be calling a faker? Ugh. Aizawa sensei? And Aizawa would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no fake version of me around here. And then all of a sudden, just a bunch of, ships would come out of the sky, and basically, over a giant loudspeaker, you would hear, greetings and farewell, puny, mere mortals. For I am Dr. Ivor Robotnik, also known as Eggman. But I'd rather go by the name of Dr. Ivor Robotnik. And as for this fleet of ships, they are my egg fleet. And you stand not a chance against any of them, and any of my bandits either. Yes, all of this world will be under the control of the great Dr. Robotnik. There you are. Have a nice day. And then just end transmission. It will just be, everyone will just be like, oh my god. This is just, everything just seems to keep on getting worse, doesn't it? And well, the whole thing with the Meta Liberation Army, well, they're aware of the Eggman Empire, and the whole big ass Doom weapon is kind of their way of saying, leave or die. Yeah, basically, the Meta Liberation Army kind of saw this coming, and so got to work on making a death weapon that could get rid of the Eggman Empire in one foul swoop if they needed to. Yet, however, contrary to his statements, he's only been releasing small waves of petty badniks that don't really work all that well for him in the long run, whenever there's so many damn quirk people in this world. Yet, however, this does seem to spark more appearances of the lookalike of Izuku Midoriya. And he seems to actually be helping the fight against the Doctor. And Izuku would be like, wait, what? He's still trying to play the hero? He's the hero in his universe, not ours. And Aizawa, it would just be like, yes, but we need as many heroes as we can get. Especially about that whole death weapon thing. And this whole egg fleet. So many damn ships and so many damn robots. This Omni death weapon that the Meta Liberation Army are working on. And they're pretty much close to finishing the whole thing. And well, something that Eggman does make very clear is that he doesn't exactly like the fact that it looks similar to a weapon from his universe called the Eclipse Cannon. Yeah, apparently the Omega, annihilation laser weapon that the Meta Liberation Army are making, it has very similar features to that of the Eclipse Cannon. The Dr. Gerald, Eggman's grandpappy, made. And so, yes, indeed, indeed. However, that is not cause for too much alarm, as pretty much test shots are fired at some of the stronger fleet ships from the actual Doom weapon. Only mere test shots, but still, if they're powerful enough to take out the more beefy ships, if they're that powerful, then they don't want to. The Hero Society and society in general does not actually want to know what the full power of this death weapon could actually do. And that is until Eggman is like, sucker. He basically just used, putting the more beefy ships right in front of the whole thing of the egg fleet, putting them in front as a diversion. As one if not the biggest ship opens up in the frontal area, a giant freaking laser that, impacts the Doom weapon that the Meta Liberation Army are trying to make. And the Meta Liberation Army just like freaking out like, holy shit, we did not know that he was that smart. And Eggman would just be like, IQ of 300, losers. And even Netsu would be like, IQ of 300, not bad. And so after taking that serious of a blow, like a sneak attack nonetheless, they now realize, like the Meta Liberation Army now realize, their enemy, their little enemy, they're a lot smarter than what they initially thought. Eggman putting out some more beefy ships in the front in order to hide the, laser cannon ship, the big ass laser cannon that would just basically take a big chunk out of their ultimate death weapon. However, they didn't indeed make a contingency plan out of this. Whatever was left of the giant ass Doom weapon, they would have to work around the clock, but they indeed would come up with something very special. And by very special, I mean kind of like BioLizard 2.0. Or, as I like to say, Final Hazard 2.0. Like, live and learn while you can. That's basically what would be floating in the sky, like, straight up in space, and shooting out all these lasers, taking out a bunch of the fleet, and Eggman would be like, oh, why does this keep on happening? Like, why do I keep on losing even though it looks like I'm going to win? Just damn it. And so, Eggman retreats with whatever is left of his fleet, But he does indeed, retreat with some very important samples that he'll need later on. For later on, like something to help him with some experimental shit that he's going to try later on. Eggman doesn't completely leave since he's not even sure if it's a possibility that that's even, possible. And the final hazard is just up in the basic orbit of Earth, just up in space, shooting lasers at nothing, pretty much, because there's nothing left of the fleet there. They basically all retreated. Like, pull back. Like, we gotta get out of this shit before it gets really bad. And, basically, it's like, Eggman's just like, indeed. And so, the whole thing with the Meta Liberation Army, and the whole thing with Shigaraki about to mess the Meta Liberation Army's whole shit up, he still does that. However, Shigaraki was not informed about the final hazard at the moment that he did this. Because of that, because of the fact that he was not informed, now Shigaraki, as Redestro's last words, like legit last words, final hazard. And he would just point up, and then Shigaraki would see the thing, would see just this laser shooting lizard attached to giant doomsday weapon. Like, he's like, what the hell were you guys trying to do? Like, the hell? And so, basically, the entire thing, the Doomsday weapon would be attached to, the new, like, Final Hazard 2.0, and, it would be crashing down. And, Izuku would be like, there is nothing we can do that would be strong enough to counteract this. It is literally going to kill us all. And that's whenever, Izuku Midoriya Shadow appears, and he's like, it seems you always seem to keep on forgetting the fact that you have your ultimate life form at your side at all times. As he would just wink over and be like, yeah, I know, I'm pulling that, I don't care. And, well, at the very same time that Izuku Midoriya's Shadow is showing up to be, like, the savior, Aries going to be, seeing as she's, just now getting into the whole business of finding things and doing things, certain very dangerous things, she would find a base, a very secretive base, and it would be labeled E321 Omega. Yes, E321 Omega. And whenever she opened the doors for the base, whatever was in there would be woken up. Operational. E321 Omega. Operational. Mission. Parameters. Non-existent. Scrubbed from database. And so, it wouldn't take Eri too long to make friends with Omega, seeing as Omega doesn't have the same, tendencies as Omega. They're different because, a lot of Omega's body is covered in red, and a lot of Omega's body is covered in blue, in the same areas, And the areas that Omega is red, Omega is blue. And, well, that would be the most standouty thing about Omega. Some other standouty things would be that he kind of looks like, Omega, but with some, like, E102 gamma parts and E101 beta Mark II parts. Just kind of like they, to, like, bring up a little bit of a pun, like they overhauled it whenever they were creating Omega, or like Eggman overhauled it. Omega is supposed to be the best of the best, basically, but he doesn't have the same ego as Omega. Omega basically has his shit sorted out. That's one of the many things that Eggman didn't exactly like about Omega that was fixed whenever they were basically Omega was being created. And so E321 Omega, just gets let out of the base by Eri. And Eri would have made her own little tiny hero costume, something that would be able to fit her, but not be too tight. And, she'd be like, okay, looks like I'm done. Now all we have to do is find everyone's favorite edgy weirdo. After all, he still is around, right? And that's whenever, you know, Izuku Midoriya, you know, their whole thing, and it'll just be like, that whole thing with the amnesia, but we'll get to that whenever we get to that. Just know that this specific version of Izuku, the one that is from this, not canon Izuku, the other one, our one, will be the one who has amnesia. And he will indeed become a part of Team Dark. Which Eri would have come up with the name after basically everything she had to go through with Chisaki and basically all of the Yakuza and, you know, her very possibly like very dangerous meeting up with E321 Omega and, you know, basically mellowing E321 Omega out so that he wouldn't freak out whenever, you know, meeting our favorite little edgelord, you know, ultimate life form, you know. And so eventually that's how Team Dark would be formed. And if you're wondering who for Team Hero, if I'm going to be making other teams, and yes I will, but who for Team Hero? Who else than Izuku and his friend group? And Izuku's friend group is Ochako and Ida. And so it'll basically be Ken Izuku and Ochako and Ida. And good God, literally, guys, freaking One For All would make Ken Izuku the power, and Ida having his quirk that he does would make him the speed, and Ochako with the quirk that she has, she would be the flying. That's how their formation will be. And considering Omega and Eri, well, now that I think about it, obviously Omega would be the power. I just gotta decide who would be the flight and who would be the, you know, speed. I guess you could say that from all of the, you know, teachings of Izuku Midoriya's shadow, like, Eri would have eventually gotten enough money and put in a good enough hiding space to afford stuff that allowed her to fly. You know, it wasn't just her herself, but, you know, her intellect and all of the money that would basically allow her to, you know, have some way that will allow her to fly. And how exactly good they would be at flight would depend on what she was carrying while she was flying, or if she was carrying anything. And that would make, seeing as Eri would be the flight, because of everything I just mentioned, and I already mentioned Omega is going to be the power, that's not going to change really, that would make Izuku Midoriya's shadow the speed of Team Dark. And so, yeah, that's how they would be built. Now, all I have to do now is find some way to make some sort of formation of Team Chaotix and Team Rose. Yes, I am indeed doing these in parts. This first part was, basically the story of Adventure 2 slash Adventure 2 Battle. Because, our little buddy was introduced in Adventure 2, Shadow the Hedgehog. And so part 1 would have to be, that. And that would mean that part 2 isn't going to indeed be the heroes part. So part 2 will indeed be called Adventure 2, because, Shadow was introduced in Adventure 2 slash Adventure 2 Battle. So, yeah. Basically, the first part will be called Adventure 2, and the second part will be called Heroes. And as for the third part, the canonicity, as far as the games go, the next game would be Shadow the Hedgehog, so I guess we just call it Part Shadow. And as for 06, whatever name we came up for that. So yeah, that is indeed the end of that. And so, yeah, Alan's the analysis, because actually I'm Maverick, so you out of here, your boys. Like, favorite, subscribe, and leave something in the comment section as long as it isn't toxic. Alan's the analysis. Goodbye.